Well, hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to another edition of Breaking News for this Friday, the 26th day of July, 2024. And our top story, well, the Olympic Games officially got going today with the opening ceremony in Paris, and the entire day was an unmitigated disaster. It started out a few hours before with a number of attacks going on, coordinated attacks against France's high-speed rail. About 800,000 people were disrupted going to various places, including people going to the opening ceremonies. Authorities are not sure who the culprit is, whether it's one of these eco-terrorist groups, whether it's one of the anti-government groups, or whether it's the Iranian terrorists. We don't know. We'll mention about the Iranian terrorists in a minute. But anyway, 800 people were stranded for a while. Then the ceremony begins, and it's outdoors, and torrential rain hit it. And now we got flood warnings tonight in Paris. So what a mess. It was terrible. The viewers said it was the worst opening ceremony ever because they tried to keep it going in the rain. It was one terrible mess. Now, on top of all of this, Israel has warned France that Iran is planning terrorist attacks during the Olympics, and so they need to be on guard. Now, unless there's some sort of attack or major disruption, this concludes all we are going to report about the Olympic Games. We're not going to say anything else unless there's some type of major distraction. Now, the whole world is watching, but we've got other things we're going to talk about. And unless something happens that has something to do with a worldwide, a terrorist attack or whatever that might be, we're going to just forget it. But it was sad. The first sketch that they did, I guess, when you watch the opening ceremonies was three people with this very woke sketch. Let's just put it this way. It wasn't very edifying. We'll just leave it at that. And so anyway, so much for the opening ceremonies for the Olympics starting in France today. Now, I also want to thank you for praying for our special forces. If you were with us earlier today, we had a prayer request. Our friends in the special forces talked to me last night. They want to know if I was still awake, and I was. They said, we really need prayer. We're in harm's way here. They told me the country they're in, but I'm not going to mention it. But I guess they were in the middle of an operation that went sideways. And they're literally afraid for their lives. So they asked for prayer. And we've been praying for them, and just heard from them a little while ago they have landed safely. So thank God for that. So thank you for your prayers. We appreciate that. There's a number of them who are Bible-believing Christians there, and we're thankful for them for the job that they do. Thankless job around the world helping the security of the United States of America in a lot of God-forsaken places. So anyway, thanks for that. All right, let's look at the headlines. Headline number one, what we mentioned: Israel warns France that Iran is planning attacks at the Paris Olympics. Israeli Foreign Minister Israel Katz reached out to his French counterpart yesterday, Thursday, with a grave message. We have intelligence indicating that Iranian operatives and other terrorist groups are planning to target members of the Israeli delegation and Israeli tourists. In a diplomatic note to French Foreign Minister Stephanie Sejourné, I guess you pronounce it, Katz highlighted Israel's growing concern over intelligence assessments suggesting that Iranian operatives and other terrorist organizations intend to launch attacks against Israeli Olympians and visitors during the Games, not just Israeli Olympians and visitors, but others, but specifically Israelis. Members of the French Gendarmerie patrol with members of the Qatar police around sports facilities for the Paris 2024 Olympic Games in the Place de la Concorde in Paris, France. They're basically, there's a picture there in this article showing them they are patrolling there, very much aware of terrorist possible attacks. Got so much going on in France. We mentioned that recently with the elections, and now the whole world watching, and the Palestinian terrorists too, the Hamas terrorists there. So they don't know. Anyway, Katz conveyed his appreciation to President Macron and the French Foreign Ministry for deploying unprecedented security measures to protect Israeli athletes and tourists. He also commended their efforts to counter hostile elements attempting to delegitimize Israel's participation in the Olympic Games. One Palestinian fool said, there's a double standard here. How dare you let Israel, participate in the Olympic Games? And obviously no one paid attention to him, but it made some headlines. Anyway, Katz expressed gratitude for the offer to host the memorial ceremony for the 11 Munich Olympic victims at the French Foreign Ministry in Paris. If you recall, back in 1972, probably one of the darkest days, if not the darkest day in Olympic history, when 11 Israeli athletes and coaches were taken prisoner by the group Black September. It was an Islamic terrorist organization. All the athletes and the coaches were murdered. It was a horrific, horrific time. That was in the Munich Olympics in 1972. And if you were there watching it, it was just heart-wrenching. It was terrible. And so, again, they have an event that memorializes that, remembers that. And so Pat says we continue to receive intelligence about the potential threat from Iranian operatives and other terrorist groups here. So so basically he said, I want to thank you for, taking care of them. But again, that's why we said at the beginning there could be a terrorist attack there, and probably specifically would hit Israeli athletes and Israeli citizens that are gone to the games, but not limited, certainly not limited to that. So if that does happen, then we will, of course, report that. Besides that, we don't care what happens there at the Olympic Games. Now, today, Benjamin Netanyahu, after meeting yesterday, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden met Donald Trump. And he was told by Netanyahu a delegation will head to Rome for hostage negotiation talks next week. This is a Reuters story. And I want to read you this before I comment. The Israeli leader angered Trump when he congratulated Biden on his victory over Trump in the 2020 election. Trump had falsely claimed the election was stolen from him by voter fraud. This is a Reuters story. He didn't falsely claim that. This is exactly what happened. Again, if you look at the evidence, we were there that night. In fact, if you recall, I've mentioned this before. I did a program called Breaking News on his channel, hischannel.com, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, an hour a day for several years. And leading up to the election, there was story after story that what's going to happen on election night in 2020, Donald Trump's going to be ahead. But then when the vote by mail comes in, Joe Biden's going to miraculously win the election and come in and sneak in and win that way. And that's precisely what happened. Now, interestingly enough, there were a lot of shenanigans that went on. We talked about this a few days ago in one of our breaking news segments when we mentioned the fact of those 22 counties that are the bellwether counties in the country of the United States of America that have always voted back and forth. They change every year, sometimes Democrats, sometimes Republicans, but since 1988, they've been exactly correct. Whoever they voted for won the election. And we mentioned 21 of the 22 voted for Donald Trump by about a 13% margin. Only one county did not, 2.1%, something like that. In Cle Elum, Washington, went for Biden, but they do the mail-in ballots there. But all the others went for Trump. And so this would be the first time this didn't happen. This cannot happen by chance. I'm sorry. This isn't a coincidence. Something happened there. But anyway, the election was stolen, but we got to move on. All right. During former President Trump's meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu, he confirmed the delegation will head to Rome for hostage negotiation talks later this week. Here's what he said. Time will tell if we are close to a deal, the Prime Minister added, saying that he believes there is progress in the hostage negotiation talks, attributing the cause of the progress to military pressure. In other words, they're slamming Hamas, and they're destroying the tunnels, killing these terrorists, getting rid of their leadership. So the military pressure is what's bringing Hamas to the table. CIA Director Bill Burns is expected to travel to Rome on Sunday for the negotiations with senior Israeli, Qatar, and Egyptian officials. Axios is reporting, citing U.S. and Israeli officials about that. The meeting will focus mainly on the strategy for the way forward, but it doesn't include details of the remaining gaps that need to be closed. Now, we are going to be tremendously surprised if something happens right now. It doesn't seem that there's a meeting of the minds with what each side wants, but stranger things have happened, so we will keep you posted. Now, this third headline is really interesting, and this is one I wanted to center in on. Donald Trump predicts World War III if he doesn't win. Today, in his talk with Netanyahu, he stated in the meeting if he didn't win, there would be a third world war, and he expressed solidarity with Israel and promised to make every effort to bring peace to the Middle East. Now, this is interesting because we've talked about this, and we've been laying it out the last few days with Kamala Harris, who she is, the most liberal of all the 100 senators in the United States Senate when she was a senator, have so many woke values and statements that she's made. And you can't run. They've tried to have her run from a record, not to post it, but it's been posted now, and we know what she stands for. But she could win. It's still possible. She could win election in November. We just don't know what's going to happen. But as Trump said, if it does happen, look for a world war. And that is certainly possible. It's very, very possible, because can you imagine the advantage certain nations would want to take on the United States, or China, let's say, well, China, for example, invading Taiwan, Russia continuing on with Ukraine, and maybe even going further, because they'd have zero respect for the person there in the White House. So I think he may be onto something. We hope that doesn't happen. We'd hope Donald Trump wins. We'd hope Kamala Harris is defeated, the left's defeated, because the country will be gone. Let's face that will be the end of the United States of America for all intents and purposes if she wins, because they've dragged it down these last 3.5 years. Another 4 years are literally with the media, with the universities, the colleges, what's teaching, with the whole spirit of the age. I'm sorry, we would be very much fortunate if we did survive, and it'd be it wouldn't be the same country we all know right now. But bottom line is, most likely there could be a very much a world war, because there'd be no respect in the United States of America, sadly. So we'll see. We don't know. But anyway, as Christians, like we said, whatever happens, we don't know what's going to happen here. We know we're not a player in last days Bible prophecy, but we know God's in control, and we're going to still be optimistic and move forward as we trust the Lord with all these things. All right, so summing up, it's been a chaotic day in France, and as the UK Daily Mail put it, France was humiliated by Olympics opening day shambles, and now there are flood warnings. Weather disaster predicted to hit tonight, as locals say they're embarrassed by the arson travel chaos that they've seen. Well, hopefully the terrorist warnings of a possible Iranian attack given to France, given the warning by Israel, will not pan out, specifically on Israeli tourists and Israeli athletes. There'll be tremendous security there. Netanyahu is saying there's progress being made on the ceasefire talks. Well, we'll see. We don't know. And it's very interesting, I think, that Donald Trump told Netanyahu if he doesn't win in November, World War III will take place. I believe that's very highly possible. We've already said pretty much the same thing here. Now, isn't it great to know, with all this chaos going on in the world at this moment, things are moving forward precisely as the Bible sets forth in the last day scenarios. We see story after story that fits exactly with what the Bible predicts the world will be like at the time of the end. That's like whenever the chaos hits, whenever we see all these difficult stories, we're not afraid, we're not concerned, because we know the Lord's in control. Basically, for us, it is a spiritual battle. That's why we need to trust the Lord, and we realize what's going to happen. And like we said earlier today, if you get our book on heaven, on our last appendices we have there, we go through Revelation 21:22, and that tells us about the new heaven and new earth, and what the world's going to be like for us for the eternal future. And that's what we have to keep our eyes on. That's the prize we're all going to get to sooner rather than later. But until then, we have a job to do for the Lord. And again, please take advantage of our resources on our website, Educating Our World. We have 65 different books on 11 different biblical topics, including 12 books on Bible prophecy, and specifically 25 signs. We're near the end, where we go through the signs that the Bible gives, but we will see at the end of the age, to basically pan out. It's panning out what the Lord said would happen as the stage is set for the second coming of Christ and the events that will precede it, that it's laid out for us in Scripture. So we've got it all there for you. Please take advantage of it. I'm Don Stewart. Thank you so much for watching. And it's no cost too, by the way. Everything we have is free. There's no expense, and we don't put you on some mailing list. So again, no obligation. All right, I'm Don Stewart. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless.